Um, my name is Jeremiah Taylor. I'm Vice President of the Chamber of Commerce. If some of you, okay, there's a couple people I don't know. Hi, I'm Jeremiah.
Hi.
And you are?
I'm Beth.
Okay.
I own Larkspur. I think we connected a little bit on Facebook.
Cool. I'm pretty active on there,
yeah.
Social media.
Yeah.
Previously with Absento, which my brother and his wife own. Now I'm doing stuff on my own, so that is unspecified on purpose. My mother is also in food, works volunteering sometimes at Absento. I think that's the technical term for her position right now, volunteer. And you are?
Cynthia, we met at
Okay,
one
cool.
of the many mixers.
Yeah, I meet a lot of people.
So I didn't realize it until you mentioned Absento, and I was like, oh yeah, I met this guy.
Yeah, primarily my brother, my sister and I really, with the help of my mother, took that over April 5th, 2009. I did most of the sandwiches with my sister, and then I was CIO, did a lot of technical stuff. Yeah, it was a very, very fun ride. So the reason why I'm talking about merchant services is because I have a pretty extensive background with that. I used to work at the Pizza Hut corporate headquarters doing technical support for Pizza Hut restaurants, and I worked with and dispatched NCR technicians. NCR created the cash register, and you see, if you go out, if you venture anywhere that involves cash transactions, you have seen an NCR device, whether you know it or not. The scales at Walmart, the ATMs at, I think Chase is NCR right now. Regardless, you've seen their equipment. After working down the road in life at Pizza Hut, I then actually worked for NCR. So I knew how the techs were dispatched because I had previously dispatched the techs. So I got to see both ends of it. ATMs, cash registers, restaurant equipment, and that all involves merchant services. Then with Absento, I was there for about 4 months. I want to say, my mom might know better, maybe 2 or 3. And then I went back to Oregon for like 8 months to 10 months. And after that, returned to Absento and Chicago. So that's a little bit of background, not because I necessarily want to boost my ego, but because I want you guys to be able to trust that I know what the hell I'm talking about, because I really do. I also have a friend who have many friends that work in merchant services, some in banking, some in app development, some simply as baristas. So it's all over the place. And today, while I can just go through a list of why you should care about merchant services, I kind of would like to answer questions if you have any of them. That will be able to allow me to gauge where I'm going to go with what I talk about. And if there are no questions, I have a pre-formatted outline that I can go with. Does anybody have specific questions that are bugging them? Yes.
We use the Square. I know we kind of briefly talked about it in one of those meetings. And because of the cease and desist thing going on, we have still...
That's a laughable joke.
Okay, well, we still have used it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm still getting paid, yeah.
Yeah, and we still got paid,
Yeah.
so I just kind of wanted
Square
to...
hasn't said anything to us about it either.
I looked
Yes.
it up, and I mean...
But Square directly hasn't
Oh, no.
contacted its customers.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I have a personal Square account in addition to Absento's account, and Coffee Ambassadors also has a Square account. Square hasn't contacted anybody because most likely they're going to eat whatever fines they are charged, because the fines are a laughable joke in their opinion. They're moving millions and millions, if not billions of dollars in the state of Illinois, and they will squash whatever litigation comes their way. They have the money to do it. It's whatever the state of Illinois is doing in that regard, they should be embarrassed by. It's transparently, blatantly silly, in my opinion. Yes.
I'd like to hear, it doesn't have to be answered at this time, but throughout the talk, I'd be curious to know best practices on managing the fees. Is it something that should be passed on to the customer? Is it better practice to eat it as a cost of business?
That's a great question. With Square, I would say the fees are negligible. I mean, 2.75% is not bad if you're swiping cards. And actually, at Absento, we were paying 1.38% because if you sign up for a $275 monthly fee, then you are not charged per swipe. The break even on that is $10,000 worth of credit card swipe transactions monthly, and then it caps at $20,000. So after that $20,000 break point, you do have to pay the 2.75% per swipe.
You're still saying that in the scheme of these fees, that's still pretty low.
Yeah, 1.38% or 2.75% is ridiculously low, to the point that industry insiders are speculating that Square is losing money on the whole thing, and that they have an end goal that has not been disclosed yet. Now what that is, it hasn't been disclosed yet. So if you read geeky blogs, like I do, there's a lot of speculation. I don't have an answer to that question. I do know that they recently rolled out a hardware package that you can purchase, not even made by Square, but just assembled by Square, that they will guarantee compatibility. So you now have this box, which is an iPad case, a printer, and the cables to connect it. So they're dumbing it down and making it as simple as possible. All that to say, I am a fan of Square, but they're not the only option. Intuit Go has merchant services options, and their fee structure, while not exactly mirroring Square, is more or less similar. And Square is basically the groundbreaker. So now, if they were Coca-Cola, you now have Pepsi, RC, Dr. Pepper, whatnot. Also, the PayPal has physical swiping hardware that you can purchase and utilize with PayPal. I have some friends who prefer PayPal because of their because of the fee structure and the fact that these friends who prefer PayPal just like the interface better. So yeah, Square's not the only game in town, but there's three: PayPal, Intuit Go, Square. I could recommend any of those three without hesitation. There are basically the way to distinguish between the newer options that I would recommend and the ones that I would not recommend would basically be the ones I would recommend are new, and the old ones are horrible, in my opinion. The merchant services companies that have been around the longest have hidden fee structures akin to a cell phone bill, or for those of us who were paying long-distance bills in the 80s, old school Ma Bell. And I don't have anything against Ma Bell, but the fee structures on most merchant service contracts are there to confuse you. One prime example would be PCI DSS compliance. That is a technical term that essentially means you are responsible for securing the data that is being transmitted from the magnetic strip on the credit card through the air if you are on wireless, or through the Cat5 if you are wired, to the servers in the cloud. And most people don't know how to be PCI DSS compliant. So the merchant service companies just assume that you're not compliant and charge you a fee, roughly about $249 per annum, which is ludicrous. Yes?
Yeah, I have a question about that PCI compliance. Maybe
Cool.
you can let me know. I've noticed that on the not statement, but the occasional, schedule of charges, that it's very difficult to wangle out of those companies.
Yes.
That we're being charged for PCI non-compliance and PCI compliance.
Yeah, they're
So
charging
way to
it.
say, pick one or the other.
You have to fight them, and essentially that means you have to write letters and get them rubber stamped by an attorney, and then send those letters to the Attorney General of the state of wherever they reside in, whether that be Delaware or New York, and then also write the Attorney General of the state you reside in, all with the rubber stamp of approval from an attorney. I know this because, yes, I did that.
Did you succeed?
Yeah, the people who came after me and my brother have 4,000 cases in pending litigation in the state of New York. And they are sitting on desks just being shuffled around. Basically, they are used by merchant service companies to threaten and scare people. And they have the power to. It's not a joke. They actually subpoenaed my brother to come to the state of New York to be sued in the amount of $6,800. And that's legal. They can do that. But they don't expect you to fight back, and most people don't. So most people just get sued, and then they acquiesce. Now, was that talking about more than PCI DSS compliance? Yes, but I also addressed that when I wrote them. But it's all just a lot easier to avoid all that and just avoid the people that give you 14 pages of poorly copied manuscript and then, just swear. It takes, 5 minutes to register? It's straightforward, and when I say 5 minutes, I actually walked Adam Burke through signing up for Square, and it literally took 5 minutes to set up a iPad with the software. He had previously established his banking relationship with Square, so that actually does take a few days. But like I said, PayPal, Square, Intuit, all of them have similar setups. And the software is straightforward. There's a little bit of, when I say straightforward, yeah, I used to fix ATMs, so it's not necessarily straightforward for somebody who doesn't develop code or build point-of-sale systems. Regardless, yeah, it was very difficult to get out of PCI DSS compliance, and effectively the way I got out of it was to terminate the relationship with this merchant service provider. Yes, sir.
Is that federally mandated, or is that mandated per company? How do they set those standards? What is compliant and what isn't?
I actually don't have a concrete answer to that because it is in flux. It changes with wireless fidelity, specifically each revision of 802.11. And I think I would actually have to look this up, but an example would be wireless encryption. When wireless first came out, a lot of people didn't think through the fact that your data needed to be encrypted. Most people understand that now it needs to be encrypted. A lot of people, less people, understand that there is a difference between types of encryption. Even less people understand that WEP is almost worse than being unencrypted, in that you can break it in literally 5 seconds if you have a good computer. WPA revision 1 is in a similar state. WPA 2 I would trust a little bit, but there's issues with all of that. Regardless, any system can be cracked and any code can be cracked. And if you are in a retail environment, it would behoove you to understand that there are hackers who will install devices within the vicinity of your router and leave it there for weeks, if not months, to crack your system. And that's not to scare anybody, it's just reality. And the best way to get around that and be PCI DSS compliance is to simply encrypt the packets at the application level. And that might be too technical. But Square, register. it handles all the encryption for you. So you could be on an unsecured network and you're still fine because Square is protecting all that data. So it would be equivalent to running around in your house naked, but it doesn't really matter because you don't live in a glass house. There's walls protecting you, so anybody can be knocking on your door and it doesn't matter. Because the Square application in that analogy is providing the walls surrounding you so that nobody knows what you're doing and what is inside your house is private, as it should be. So that was the last question. Yes, sir?
So what if you're using a wired system where you strictly use the swiping machine and it is plugged right into the phone line? Is there anything that the merchant needs to do or can do to raise that security level, or is that essentially...
With Square, you can't do that because,
but if
well,
you're using
sorry.
the old
school
machine.
All I have to do is get on your network to hack that system. If you have a wired network and zero wireless, it becomes a little difficult, but I could literally plug in a device to any outlet in your building that is connected to the same power source as the router, and I can provide myself with Ethernet over power and hack your system. So to assume that your data is secure because you're not on wireless, it's more difficult to get to, but it's not secure.
But if you've got one outlet, that one outlet is just for the merchant services machine, that's a fairly high...
Security, yeah, that would be great. Awesome. And if everybody was that secure, hackers would be bored and find something else to do. Not that I know anything about hacking. Yes?
Yeah, I'm involved with the International Press Club of Chicago, and we're dealing with monthly meetings,
Cool.
taking reservations, payments over the phone. Would Square be a good solution for that? Because they're looking into different options.
The fee structure goes up on that to 3.5% for unswiped transactions. 3.25, thank you.
Yeah.
And that's why some of my friends were preferring PayPal, because over the phone, and actually Square changed a little bit of their model. It used to be that, you would somehow have to create a signature on the iPad without somebody's physical presence, aka forging their signature to do a transaction over the phone. I think they realized that they were just basically implying or encouraging forgery, so they actually allow you to bypass that signature line item now. But to answer your question, not necessarily Square in that regard. I can see why people would prefer PayPal.
PayPal, can you just use a credit card? You don't have to set up a PayPal account, or do you? To pay.
To pay, you can actually, yeah, you can pay without a PayPal account. It sets up a dummy account more or less. But yeah, you can absolutely pay without a PayPal account. You can pay with any credit card. Well, any credit card accepted in the contiguous United States. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question when you talked back about, actually maybe I shouldn't connect this to anything. I was wondering if, of those three that you've mentioned, if there's advantages to the customer, more advantages to the customer if you use one of those three.
Yeah, I would say that Square actually has a customer focus that I don't know or haven't seen from PayPal or Intuit. I keep on saying Intuit. I have absolutely no experience with it other than to compare pricing structure. Yeah, Square has a directory and they have a wallet. Now that Starbucks has signed up with Square, which, hey, Starbucks has signed up with Square, they kind of know what they're doing. You have Square Wallet where you can associate it with a credit card, and then you have swipeless transactions. You don't even have to have your credit card on you. You just have a phone, a smart device, and then you go in and you can browse the menu of the retailer that you are visiting, and you can't purchase from the phone. You just browse the menu, select your items, and then tell the barista, cashier, whatever, what you want, and then they create the order. So the Square Wallet replaces the credit card.
And I don't know if it's a security feature or more like a social media thing that they're doing, but your picture comes up. Because
Yeah.
I've gone to places, handed someone my credit card, they've swiped it, and because I registered with Wallet, my picture pops up on the sign screen.
I would say both. It's a security feature because when I was ringing people up, yeah, I'm like, okay, does this picture match this person?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. So security, yes. I would also say social media, absolutely. The founder of Square is also the founder of Twitter. He didn't forget how Twitter worked. He still remembers this. And Square Directory is very verbose. And even if you don't want to use Square Register, I recommend, if you care about social media and being relevant online, create an account. Have it be a dummy page. Because Square Directory is going to grow as Square continues to partner with Starbucks and other vendors. It's just social media engineering. Here's an SEO tip. You want your name listed on the web a bunch. There's a free option. They're going to do free advertising for you and create a really slick interface, and it doesn't cost you anything. So I would recommend creating a profile if for no other reason than that. It's a free listing. There's no charge if you don't swipe anything. So like my personal account, I have an account under my name. I haven't charged anybody anything, and I haven't paid anything.
The other thing too, I was going to add with her question, I know that one thing that I find is great with my clients, I'm in a business, I'm a psychotherapist, so I see people weekly.
Now I remember you.
Yes, and so when I swipe their card, I don't have to retype in their email or their text number in order to send them a receipt. The credit card remembers that, or the Square remembers the credit card number, and so it's really flawless.
That's a really good point, and that makes it incredibly convenient because I can, when I was ringing people up, I would say, do you want a receipt? Their response is, nah, and then well, okay, I have your email, and I have your phone number associated with your account. You sure? And then they're like, oh yeah, email me. Or maybe they don't want it, but it's literally all saved, and it is set up by the customer. So if they want to receive a SMS text of the receipt, they set that up. If they don't want to, then they can turn off that feature. It really, it speeds up the flow of the cash transaction, or in this case, the non-cash transaction. I actually had somebody arguing that they couldn't use Square because they operate a movie theater and the transaction period is too long. And that was months ago, and he doesn't know what he's talking about. The transaction period, actually, Square authentication is the fastest I've seen. Old school credit card readers are maple syrup compared to Square. And that's even in a crowded wireless environment that we had at Absento. Shopkeep is a competitor to Square, sort of, but they're pushing more of a point of sale option, and the actual merchant service in that scenario is something you negotiate on your own. I don't like Shopkeep. It crashes a bunch, and it doesn't remember your email address well. The places I have gone to multiple times, and every time it's like I'm a new person, and that's annoying because my email address is long. It's almost a pun. It's emailjeremih@gmail.com. I hate typing it. I want it to be remembered, and Square does that. Yeah, so that would be Shopkeep versus Square. But I have nothing against Shopkeep. It's just that they're a point of sale system that is missing the major component that I care about, which would be the merchant service transaction.
And not that this is a plug for Square, but I've also had experience doing refunds on Square,
Yeah.
and I don't know how they're getting away with it, but I pay nothing to do a refund. There's no charge to me to refund someone their money. and they usually get it in like a 1 or 2 business days, I believe.
And that's something I'd like to reiterate. I don't work for Square, and I don't plan on going to work for them. It's just they're amazing. So if somebody wants to do something better than Square, well, sure, I'll say that that's good. But right now, it's the best I've seen. And it's many players in the merchant service environment have been obfuscating things for years that is essentially stealing money from all of our pockets. And I'm kind of anti that. I'm not a fan of theft. So when I see something that is so far ahead of the rest of the players in the game, I'm just pointing out that it exists. Yes?
I have another unrelated question. Is there a recommendation, and it may go back to the gentleman's other question, for if you're doing primarily wholesale sales, things like that, is one particular firm better?
She won't mind me mentioning her, so she'll actually like it. Jennifer Chen with CAFventures, who does the coffee tours around Chicago, she was the one who was telling me that she prefers PayPal. I haven't really had a long conversation with her about that, but I know that essentially she has a higher price point than a cup of coffee, and she does a lot of tickets over the internet, and so she is selling tickets to people she might never have been within 10 miles of. So yes, in that instance, she prefers PayPal. I think that Square has been addressing that, e.g. with removing the need to actually put your signature on the page, the final transaction page. They have been addressing that. I don't know currently what PayPal looks like versus Square in a telephone transaction regard. But I mean, I think either one, you're not going to be picking a bad option. It's like comparing good Coca-Cola, like the good stuff, and the good Dr. Pepper to like, I don't know, urine. It's not even remotely, it's not hard, it's not difficult. It's, if you want PayPal or Square or Intuit Go, you're doing great. And I would prefer Square, but it's so far ahead of what has been out there. It's, in my mind, a no-brainer. Yes?
Could you explain if, like with Square, and you have a customer that you go to them and they pay you there, would you plug a device into your cell phone? How does that work?
Yes, primarily Apple phone. The Square system is pursuing Android developers, but Android was their second thought. Their first was Apple. And
so it wouldn't work on my Samsung?
No, your Samsung, what is that, a Galaxy 2? Is that a Nexus?
I forget.
Okay. The compliance between Square and Android is not entirely as good as Apple. I'm sure it would work. That's a, what's that?
It's a 2.
It's a 2, okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it works with a 2.
Oh, thanks.
He would know.
So is there like a local Square rep, or where do you get the Square?
Internet.
Yeah, and they don't even have a help desk. Well, they do, but all their tech support is all through Twitter, and their standard response is, give us 24 hours and we'll get back to you. And they do, but their other standard response is just buy a new iPad or buy a new phone. You're going to save the money in a month if you're in a retail environment. If you're doing any sort of volume, it's going to all pay for itself. Literally, ad absento, it paid for itself in like a week. It's that absurd.
I'm sure you could do it on a wireless iPod too.
It depends on the model,
right?
because I did try it with the earlier generation iPod Touch. It didn't work.
Okay.
I think you have to have a 4th generation iPod Touch to be able to utilize Square. With the iPhones, it starts, the 4, I mean, I think the 3GS actually worked, but as the app progresses, they're not going to worry about legacy compliance. I mean, they might, and they probably have somebody at their board meeting saying, yes, we must be legacy compliant. But realistically, it's not something to really worry about. Unless you're not doing volume. If you're talking about really low volume, well then it might not be worth it for you to get an iPad or an iPhone. But if you have volume that is remotely respectable, it'll pay for itself almost immediately. Yes?
So I'm totally old school. I don't even really know what Square is.
Okay.
So, sorry to take up your time.
Totally fine. No,
Question,
that's a great question, because I'm sure some people watching the video are going to be old school as well.
Well, I have a flower shop, and I use
Sweet.
the computerized QuickBooks point of sale system.
Okay.
And once a week, I have somebody call me and say they can lower my merchant service rates with
Don't believe them.
switching. But supposedly, there's nothing else that I can use besides my Intuit merchant service company.
People lie to you.
Yeah, I always tell them, and I mean, even my bank tells me this, everybody tells me this.
The people who pursued Absento when we were starting doggedly pursued us, and the guy came in his nice 3-piece suit. No, he gland hands everybody, and he's a really, really great salesman. He's also a liar. And I had previously fixed ATMs, and he grabbed the credit card swiper, and looking at it said that it was not going to work with the current systems, and that we needed to rent a piece of machinery from him at $50 a month for 4 years. Piece of machinery cost like $200 brand new, so he was ripping us off. And the only reason he got away with it was because the people who had the final say made the decision when I wasn't there. My whole point is that they are dogged salesmen, and they will lie and lie and lie, and repeatedly. And the only reason that I got any traction in court with them was that I caught them in lies and verified them. Which is a long story, but yeah, they're snakes. And to answer your question, you have a point of sale system that runs QuickBooks. QuickBooks, yeah, that's an Intuit product. So when I say Intuit, you could call them up and see what options they have for you. And I trust them, they're reputable. So I have nothing against them at all, and they will give you honest answers to your question and to the compatibility. I'm assuming you have a PC?
Yes.
Okay. And do you have a touch screen?
No.
How do you swipe the credit cards? Is it on the side of the monitor?
No, it's a little separate swiper.
Then your separate swiper is absolutely, most likely, I'm going to say 99.9%, completely separate from your QuickBooks. The only way it is integrated is if you are actually paying Quicken/Intuit for that feature. That device, yes, that is not Square compatible. It's basically a real simple computer that is independent from anything else in your shop, and simply is designed to transmit data back and forth to the banks. And you could utilize that with a variety of merchant service companies. Not with Square. That device won't work with Square. PayPal, I kind of doubt. But what I would recommend for you is, do you ever go to Restaurant Depot? No. Okay. Restaurant Depot has a connection. Sorry, what?
Costco?
Yeah, Restaurant Depot, Costco. Both work. Costco is also reputable and actually cares about their members. They will give you honest answers to those questions. Costco actually sells those devices if you didn't buy it there.
Swipe devices?
Yes. Yeah. Is yours connected to a router, or is yours connected to a phone?
Jack.
Okay.
And
Does it
half-
look like a phone jack, or do you know that it is actually?
It looks like a phone jack.
Okay, because RJ12 and RJ45 connectors look identical to the laity, I would say.
That's why-
Yeah. Who do you pay for your phone service? Comcast or AT&T?
AT&T.
Okay. Yeah.
And half of my transactions are not swiped. Half of them are keyed in.
Okay.
So I pay different.
Yeah. I would talk to Quicken, Intuit,
Okay.
and possibly PayPal. But for your situation, I'd probably say Quicken or Intuit, because they will use your pre-existing hardware. You won't have to learn a new system, and they'll probably cut your rates. You might have your current merchant service company threaten you with legal action and tell you that you're in a contract that it goes on for 4 years. And even if you haven't agreed to a contract, they might still tell you that, and might produce documentation with a forged signature on it. And that's how you catch them. But just to let you know, they're not nice.
Right. So Intuit is the company that, it's always confusing.
Intuit and Quicken are the same.
Uh-huh.
QuickBooks, Quicken, I started using when I was 8 or 9, because I had a paper route and we had to do the money. But yeah, they've been around for a while. They're reputable, and the ones that aren't reputable have names that you wouldn't recognize, that haven't been on national television with ads, like Super Bowl ads. Yeah.
So, now, just to stick with the kind of really old school hardware kind of
Yes, sir.
idea, and to go back a little bit to the PCI compliance, if you have an old style swipe machine, it is definitely plugged straight into the phone line.
Yes, sir.
There's no wireless network anywhere. Is that considered a PCI compliant, or are there other things like?
It
you have to go
should
beyond that,
it
like
should be.
storing the copies of the actual receipts.
I'm sorry. Receipts destruction, I think, might be part of PCI DSS compliance. The code is, as I said earlier, in flux, and I've read it. I've read the code, not the whole white paper, but most of the code multiple times over the last 6 years. And because it's in flux, I can't give you an answer that I can really stand on for very long. I understand it conceptually, and I might actually argue with the people who do codify PCI DSS compliance, because in your situation, what's to say I don't know how to climb up the telephone pole and plug into your network? And if you think that, if we think that that's a little outlandish, well, you haven't lived in Mexico, because there are kids who grow up knowing how to do that. So to assume that that's difficult or outlandish is a little naive. Yes?
Okay, so I'm not sure this is outside of the scope of what we're talking about, but I thought I'd throw this out there and see if you had any thoughts on it.
Red.
So when my clients, during their first session, I have them fill out like a financial statement form where they provide me with a credit card, all credit card number, all the information that I need so that I can swipe it myself or run it myself without them being present.
Right.
And in that, on that same form, I state there that they are agreeing to me charging them if they, don't give me 24 hours notice,
Yes.
if insurance doesn't cover their remaining balance, if they have
Yes.
a remaining balance after 30 days, and I run their credit card without, they've agreed to this, they're not physically there. Thoughts? Concerns, ideas? Is it kosher?
Yeah, I've had those forms. I've been on the receiving end of those forms and the submitting end of those forms. Yeah, it's really like, I could throw out scary scenarios until I'm blue in the face, but it's really just about trust. Yeah, if I trust you and I'm paying you money because I think you're good at what you do, well, I'll leave a pile of gold at your front door. I mean, if I trust you, I trust you. It's less about, it's I think the legal term is expectation. I would say it kind of falls under expectation of privacy, or at least expectation of security. Because obviously, if you're a trustworthy person, that's great. But say it has nothing to do with ethics. Say you're forgetful, and you don't lock your office, and you let random people go into your office, and they clean, and they also have a side gig ripping you off. You know, it's more about trust, and I think that's the overarching intent of PCI DSS compliance. And it's more to encourage people to, well, its original intent was more to encourage people to treat the data as unsecured and to secure it. That would be what I would espouse regarding PCI DSS compliance. It all goes back to my belief that the application securing the packets and encrypting the packets is best practice. Because I could tell you stories about ATMs that are absolutely unsecured on shared networks, on phone lines that are being shared with voice lines. There are a lot of things out there in the retail world where people aren't being secure. And that's why I believe the government allowed merchant services companies to fine people for being out of compliance. So I think the original intent was good, but they're not even telling you you're paying a PCI DSS compliance and non-compliance fee unless you actually read the fine print. So that's where I feel that the original intent has been dismissed.
You mentioned the PCI white paper earlier. Is that put out by some government agency, or is it a coalition of the...
I'm not sure what the codifying body is in this instance. I doubt it's the SEC or the FCC.
But it is sort of one general standard that applies that all the...
Yeah,
they don't each have their own set.
Sometimes they have conflicting sets. And then it's... Yeah, tech's kind of like that, like the world of 802.11. You see a new wireless router come out, and we had A, then we had B, then we had G, and now we have N, and then we have sort of N and sort of G, where you have disagreements over radio fidelity, and you have people who are on one side of the fence regarding radio fidelity, and then people are on the other, and they're debating over who has the better codec and driver, and it's endless. So to say that there is a rubber stamp of approval regarding PCI DSS compliance and a codifying body, I don't know what that body is, but there, in the world of tech, there is generally something that emerges as better practice and standard, yes. Although even stating that, I could get me in a long discussion about what I just said. So it's kind of endless. But yeah, cream rises to the top, in my opinion, generally in the world of tech. Except, of course, beta. They lost.
Jeremiah?
Yes?
I was sent with the specific responsibility to get a list of fees. I don't even know if this is possible.
Okay.
I know that you said it's about 2.75 per square.
No, exactly 2.75%.
Okay, 2.75 per square.
Per swipe.
Per swipe. Okay.
The non-swipes are a different fee structure, and then you pay, it's 3.25%, and then you actually also pay, which is a hidden fee in the world of merchant services, a transaction fee. Because people will quote you, oh, we'll give you 0.08% or 0.8% or 1.2%, and then they neglect to mention or hope that you ignore the fact that they're giving you a per transaction flat fee of anywhere from a quarter, meaning 25 cents, to up to and exceeding $1. And
Swear doing that?
No, absolutely not. No, that's evil, 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 evil. I understand that there is a transaction fee, but it's like ATM fees. They hit you on both ends, and yes, I could sell you 0% fees, but charge you that transaction fee and make a killing. So to answer your questions, I believe the transaction fee in the case of non-swiped transactions is 15 cents.
I don't know.
Okay, so it's 3.5%, 3.25% for non-swiped transactions plus a transaction fee. But it's a low fee, and like I said, Square's most likely losing money on that transaction. It's as low as they can get it. Yes.
How much was PayPal again? I
don't have fee structure memorized for PayPal currently. I did when I was shopping around. I don't, and I don't have it memorized right now. But they're transparent, and you literally could go to PayPal.com and it'll tell you, and it depends on the origin of the transaction. Whether it's a credit card that is being entered, or if somebody is giving you money via a bank transfer. Yes?
It's 2.7%, I just looked it up.
Yay! Internet.
There you go.
And I've had clients, this is kind of a rant, this is a little more different method of payment, but I've had clients paying me through Chase Quick Pay.
Yeah?
And there's no fee.
And
I don't even think you have to be a Chase
No, you don't.
member or Chase banker, bank with Chase in order to have that. So that's another way to completely avoid all fees if you're in a certain profession where that would be.
And actually, when I was in charge of Coffee Ambassadors wholesale accounts, Coffee Ambassadors being the actual roaster of Absento Coffee's coffee, I ended up paying all my bills via PNC web interface. All you do is you input, and a lot of them are automatic bill pay. And yeah, PNC, Chase, that's a great option, and all you have to do is know a person's name and address, and they will mail the check for you. So you don't have to buy checks from your bank anymore. You don't have to buy stamps anymore. For whatever reason, the banks are happy to do that. I found it incredibly useful and relatively intuitive as well. Did that answer your questions?
I did get a different number though when I looked it up on PayPal just now.
Oh, did you?
It says
How would you
sell
compare
something,
Square and
2.9%
PayPal with,
plus
let's
30
say,
cents.
if Square, Intuit Go, and PayPal are
Just says
are the
seven.
cheapest and the most modern and most useful, that, most recommended? Let's pick something from the other end.
Okay.
How would you compare that?
I would
like
say,
what we might be using at the chamber.
well, I would say that the old school merchant service providers are old school, stuck in the Stone Age, except when it comes to their legal department, which is top notch, and when it comes to writing fine print. They put their money into their legal department, and they do that quite well. And then sales, they astroturf really, really well. But no, there's no advantage. And if you want the old school methodology and old school mechanisms, as was mentioned with yours, Intuit Quicken will provide you with that. And there are some legitimate and are some great old school vendors, but they're harder to find, and a bank is going to make money on being a bank. Square doesn't need to make money on processing transactions because that's not their end goal. I don't know what their end goal is, but they're losing money on processing credit cards, so why not take advantage of it? Yeah, for now.
So people who are using old school sort of setups, what do you think the percentage or the fees are about?
Last time I worked it out for Absento, and it was different for Coffee Ambassadors and Absento. We had some months, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mom, some months were 7%, some were 12%, 8%. Yeah, but the thing is one recently for CA was around 10% or so. A lot of it's because what they don't tell you is that it's really funny. Okay, you have to pay a setup fee every month to have a relationship with MasterCard. So it's like, oh, you ran a MasterCard, so you have to pay a flat fee of $15 this month. What's funny is you also have to pay a fee if you don't interact with MasterCard in a given month. So it's the PCI DSS compliance thing again. They're getting you on both ends. They're charging you a fee if you use an established relationship, and they're charging you a fee if you don't use an established relationship. So rather than arguing with them regarding all of that, I just say just toss it. Just go with somebody who's not going to even quibble, and just who's going to be straightforward, which PayPal is, which Square is, and Intuit is. So as far as specifically people with old school equipment, I would recommend Quicken or Intuit, whatever nomenclature you would like to use. If people are willing to move into new areas of technology, I would say a brand new iPad, the 4th generation. The 3 is really buggy and iffy, and the 4 has double the RAM of the 2. I would recommend, because Square is forward-thinking, to get the iPad 4th generation and put Square on that. And then you're not going to have, you can run Square Register on an iPad 2, which Absento is doing, but there are memory issues because Square has loads and loads of pictures if you want them on there. So if you have a menu of decent size, it will be eating up a lot of memory. If you only have 1 or 2 items in your Square Register menu, then you don't necessarily need that. But if you are in a fast-paced environment, I would spend the most money on the newest hardware for that.
And if you don't have a menu, you don't have to have it on there.
Oh yeah, and you can do it on a phone. The drawback to doing it on a phone is that it takes longer to kind of be unwieldy with the phone, and also if you're on 3G because of the encryption, or if you're on 3G depending on your signal, it could be an issue, and the wireless antenna is going to be better in your iPad versus a phone, just because of the size.
I see Square a lot at the farmers market.
Yeah, that's a very, very big market, and I've actually been talking with people about that because, well, I'm on the board of the Chamber of Commerce, so I get to talk about business, and it's fun. And it's absolutely a boon, because now if you have an iPad that has a cell antenna, you can be literally anywhere, and anywhere that has cell coverage, and be processing transactions. And you don't have to worry about writing down credit card numbers or swiping. I've seen the farmers market in Salem, Oregon 4 years ago, 5 years ago, actually had one of those old magnetic swipers from like the 80s, and people were literally using that. I can't imagine why anyone would do that, because that's just a gold mine, especially in Oregon where everybody's on meth and stealing identities. Absolutely horrible. Yes, yes. Horrible, horrible, horrible. So I would recommend investing in new hardware.
It's the future.
It is. And they're making it so incredibly cheap. It's amazing. And app development is where development is going. And also, you can use Square without an iPad or iPhone. You can set up the directory, you can create a profile, but you will not be processing transactions.
I have a few additional facts because I did a lot of research on this. You are legally allowed to charge, to require a minimum of $10 in order to run a credit card.
Really?
Verify that. It was either 5 or 10. Maybe it used to be 10 and now it's 5. Because I used to get so mad at Olivia's here every time they wanted, like, I'd be like, you guys aren't allowed to do that. You're not allowed to require a minimum for me to use my credit card.
I've seen that go back and forth, so.
I was just researching it like 6 months ago, like what the newest law stated. It was either $5 or $10. You can look that up. I don't require that, but I rarely have that limit. Sometimes I have $12 I'm charging. But the other thing too is that you are allowed to charge the customer the fee, but you can't exceed the fee. So I can't.
You can't make money off of it.
I can't be making money off it. So I could say, okay, if you run your credit card, you have to pay a 2.75% fee on top of that as a convenience fee to use your credit card, but I can't charge them 3%.
So it'd be akin to shipping and handling, like the infomercials where they say, you know, $20 plus shipping and handling, and then you find out the shipping and handling's 30.
Which, how does the tax work out on that?
You set your own tax rate.
I'm not a taxable business, so in that way.
Square Register, Tim was really annoyed because it didn't allow this. It only allowed one tax rate, but now you can set up ad nauseum. I could set up 28,000 tax, well, and probably buffer overflow. I can have set up 3 or 4 tax settings and also no tax, because food in the city of Chicago, if it is not consumed on premise, as in coffee beans, are taxed at a lower rate versus sandwiches and then bottled sodas, which are taxed at a whopping 12% in the city of Chicago. The only thing taxed more is at higher rate would be tobacco, but it's evil, so we can tax that.
The other thing too that I learned was that, well, I was reading an article about it that was explaining all of these regulations, and it was saying that they recommended for like best customer service to include the transaction fee in your rates or in the cost of the item, and then you can offer a discount if they pay with cash.
So like a net 10.
Rather than people feeling punished for using their credit card, encouraging cash by giving a discount to cash payment, you know, something like that was best practice.
That's really good advice. It blew up in the face of the gas stations in the 1980s.
Oh, I hate it now.
It's
so cheap here, and then I run my credit card.
Yeah, it's an interesting case study. Specifically in the state of Oregon, there's, I believe, ARCO. They have the AM/PMs, and they charge you an exorbitant fee of like, I want to say it was like 80 cents or $1 or something. No, per swipe. But at times, if I'm getting $5 of gas, it was annoying. Yeah. Thank you for that information. That was really useful. Yeah, and this whole thing, it's such a quagmire because you have lawyers on both sides. Like you have consumer advocates, and then you have sharks. I would call them loan sharks, who are both fighting it out. And so the law can change tomorrow, and it's just a matter of keeping abreast, but also, or not keeping abreast and just having somebody else worry about it. Like the cease and desist with Square, I'm not remotely worried about it because they can literally buy a bank and make that lawsuit go away. People buy banks all the time, and they could create their own bank in Chicago and just call it Square of Chicago. It's not even remotely something I'm worried about.
Apparently it all happened in California, and they had figured it out.
Yeah.
Like, it ended up just getting dismissed in court. They paid some fines, it got dismissed in court, now they're legally allowed to operate in California. Something like that.
I would sooner believe that Red Bull will send a man to outer space before NASA does than that Square would stop participating in merchant service transactions in the state of Illinois. And by the way, Red Bull is sending a man to outer space.
No.
And NASA isn't.
But they have.
Yeah, they have, yeah. And they might, but Red Bull's going to beat them. All right. I think am I over time by 5 minutes? Okay, any questions? Yeah.
Thank you.
And yeah, if you want to ask me further things later, I'm available. Generally findable on Foursquare. It's probably the easiest way. Although I have a phone, I don't answer it.
Are we gonna start stalking you, because we know where you are in Foursquare, is that what you're saying?
Actually, I would like to add to what you said earlier, which is snakes is a very nice description. I'm a salesman for a merchant services company. The word forgery that you used earlier is absolutely not an exaggeration. I have a case right now where they have clearly forged a contract and provided a copy of it, where the signature of the merchant who supposedly signed the contract is about half an inch big, and this is someone who signs like John Hancock, and the signature line is superimposed over it, so you can see it's like a cut and paste job.
Oh,
So they don't let them near your machine, even 10 feet away, where they might be able to see the numbers you wrote on the side of it. Don't let them see your receipts. Don't leave a file cabinet open anywhere near them. Send them away. It's almost better to pay someone that you're with now and paying a lot for than to risk getting slammed by them.
Yeah, I agree, and the same thing happened to us. They absolutely forged my brother's signature, and it wasn't even remotely similar. And the only reason I can say this is because I proved that in court.